Company this Saturday. Thank you. Shall we kick off with the front page of The Times? A UN refugee body backs return hubs for migrants. And this is under the Labour government, Shona.
Yeah, so this is a policy that we've been hearing, or a proposal that we've been hearing quite a lot about in recent weeks, which has perhaps surprised some people who think, is this a reboot of the Rwanda scheme in terms of deporting asylum seekers, the difference being that what's being talked about now is the prospect of people trying to claim asylum in the UK, and if they are unsuccessful, then being sent to a hub, potentially somewhere like Albania, Serbia, Bosnia. And the news is that the plan has won the endorsement of the United Nations Refugee Agency, and this is being described as game-changing, not just in terms of potential legal challenges, which of course plagued the Rwanda scheme, but also in terms of getting support within the Labour Party for the scheme and making this distinction, I think, between what the Tories were trying to do and completely failed to do, and what Labour are looking at as at least part of the solution to the huge number of crossings and attempted crossings of the Channel.
And, you know, despite all of this conversation around it, Ryan, the boats still continue to make that perilous journey. Is this very different from the Rwanda scheme, do you think?
It's different in the sense that the Rwanda scheme was an out-and-out deportation scheme. You lost your appeal, you went there and you stayed there. Where these return hubs, you'd either be sent to that country and then maybe come back here, or you'd be sent to the country where you come from. Now, I think with this is formal negotiations actually haven't taken place yet. So I think we can talk up, discussions with the Balkans or Bosnia, North Macedonia. But actually, when push comes to shove, are they going to want thousands of people on their doorstep? I think it's all very well for the British government to be talking about this, but actually, when we're sending planes over there, what are the voters in that whichever respective country it is? What are they going to say about it? And the knockback on that will be the measure of whether actually the scheme gets off. We could offer a lot of money to some of these countries, but sometimes the money just isn't enough. We've tried with sort of similar schemes with Albania. Italy are trying a similar scheme with Albania, but actually getting them off the ground is really, really tough.
It's also worth noting that there's due to be a meeting of Western Balkans leaders in London in the autumn where this will be top of the agenda. So that's just to get things going. As you say, we're possibly looking at another 6 months before the conversations even begin. And of course, part of the issue with the Rwanda scheme was it was supposed to be a very strong deterrent from people even attempting to come here, basically saying you've got no chance, you'll be sent to Rwanda. Whereas if there is a chance, then obviously you could argue that the number of people making that attempt might not be dramatically impacted by the threat of being sent, especially to somewhere perhaps a little bit less daunting if they are unsuccessful.
But I think what the UN thing does, it really just gives the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, that political cover. So when she speaks to those Labour MPs and people and campaigners who are not really, that don't want anything to do with this, she can actually say, look, the United Nations have backed this. The Refugee Council have come out and said it's unworkable and it's going to be a waste of public funds. But it just gives them that little bit of cover to actually get this over the line.
Yeah, it will continue to be a headache for whoever's in government. Another headache for Keir Starmer right now is Donald Trump and those tariffs. It's being covered, isn't it, in the Daily Mail, page 6 and 7, because he had that 35-minute conversation on the phone with Donald Trump, dialing down again, trying to make way for a relief in those tariffs, which there's no light at the end of the tunnel is there? Not
at the moment. And Keir Starmer has actually been on holiday. He's been on holiday in the past week. He broke away from wherever he is. We haven't quite found out where he is, but he's broken away from that to actually have this telephone conversation with Donald Trump. And I thought the language actually from Downing Street was quite strong, actually, in terms of he talks about how he wants open and free trade. So actually pushing back on Donald Trump, who loves tariffs. He said tariffs is a beautiful word. So
you're trillions and trillions of dollars.
Exactly. So you're battling against that all the time when you're speaking to Donald Trump. But it does seem that we've had word from the White House officials in the past week that this deal could be signed in the next 3 or 4 weeks or so. And it feels like we'll be part of that first group who get a deal over the line, so the likes of India, South Korea or Japan will be at the forefront of the queue. But I thought the interesting thing as well is that we're dangling the carrot of a royal visit this year. So I think that may be playing into Donald Trump's thought process as well. Just try and keep everything on side, everything smooth. But the trouble is, Donald Trump is a deal maker. He loves money. This is the trouble we're fighting against.
If the Prime Minister has to use a bit of soft diplomacy, he's going to do it, Shona.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see the Daily Mail describing potential coded language where Starmer's talking about the importance of protecting the national interest, which could be code for suggesting Britain could retaliate if the tariffs aren't dropped. But it's fascinating, as always, to read the quotes from Donald Trump and try and determine some sense. He says about tariffs, "We're taking in a lot of money, which we've never done before. We're moving along very nicely, and we're going to end up with a baseline of a substantial number."
Cool.
Okay.
What does
Clear
he
as mud.
mean? OK, shall we just park that for a moment? Another big story, Harry and Meghan, they're never far from the headlines, are they? This is in the Daily Mirror. Take it away, Shona. What's happening here? What's the latest?
So the author, Tom Bauer, has promised more bombshell revelations about the couple in a follow-up book to the one he wrote, which came out in 2022, called Revenge, Meghan, Harry and the War Between the Windsors. And I think an interesting quote to me in this piece is where he says, "A lot of people were sceptical of the first book and couldn't quite believe it. Now more are converted to what I discovered then, and they'll be fascinated by what I've discovered now." And as the Daily Mirror is pointing out, the news of this new book comes as Harry deals with the bitter breakdown of relationships at the charity that he set up in memory of his mother, which I think there's been a few things in the last few weeks and months where perhaps people who think, I don't have an opinion on this, I don't really care, there's a rift between royals, maybe a few things are now sort of unfolding that are making people think maybe there's more truth to some of the rumours and the tensions than we thought before. Whether that affects any of our daily lives is another matter. But what the writer is saying here is that he says Harry is thinking of a reconciliation. That is just totally unrealistic. There's zero chance because of the irreconcilable anger on the part of William and Kate, but also pointing out that obviously Meghan and Harry come from very, very different backgrounds. And he says Meghan wants to be a billionaire celebrity. We've seen the Netflix series, a lot of derision, but then a lot of money still to be made, and points out that Harry spent his whole life never having a penny in his pocket. So this notion that is it reconcilable, the goals of these two individuals, and has it gone so far down a path that, were Harry to want to come back, which we see headlines and claims of that all the time, it does seem increasingly impossible for that to happen.
I don't know about you, Ryan, but I feel like whether there's a new book or not, I've heard a lot of this before, whether it's like Shona says in the Netflix series, in Meghan's latest podcast. I've heard it. I mean, do we need any more? Does the public need more?
It is difficult for them because they have to keep reinventing themselves. And what do they do next? How many more times can they sort of tell their own story? And Tom Bauer, there's a quote here from him. He says, they're both really, really wounded. But he says the fascinating thing is that they just keep fighting back. She's got her new, obviously, documentary series, and they're just trying to find ways to sort of reach that sort of celebrity status or the status that they crave.
Surely they have that status. And then if you strip back, maybe this is me being a bit silly, if you strip back the royal titles, everything else, they're a family with kids who don't get to see, granddad or uncle. And if you look at it like that, I feel a bit sad.
That's the saddest thing about it. The cousins have barely seen each other. Harry was obviously over in London in the past week or so for this court case. We understand that he didn't see King Charles during that time. Our phone calls being taken, within the family. It's a really, really difficult situation. And you just wonder, the longer that it goes on, the harder it is to actually make amends.
OK, we could talk about that all show. We'll move on. Telegraph, page 26, Shona. Is this the end of the line for the model railway? I know you love this. I follow you on Instagram.
Well, we often hear that when a question is asked in a headline, the answer is no. And I want the answer to be no here. It's an interesting story hooked on the fact that Hornby, the model railway maker, has delisted from London's AIM stock exchange. So that's what's prompted the question. And there's loads of different factors here. It's interesting, though, that they say the industry's been struggling in the face of rising costs, shrinking living spaces, which I think is a big one, and an ageing population. But then if the population's ageing, it is obviously more associated with older people. So basically, if we get to the end of the piece, there's people saying loads has been done to attract younger people to the hobby. A lot of people, I think we were talking about all the evils of online and social media influence, but somebody says it's about having something tactile and real life to engage with.
Lovely stuff. Shona, Ryan, thank you so much. Join us after the break.
A show of military might and menace.